Welcome back, guys, to the Tuesday XRP price update, where we jump into the XRP price chart, talk about everything we're seeing here on the charts and how we have actually seen a sign of life come out of XRP here in the last 8 hours, actually bounce and break free of that $2.15 to $2.17 area that we spoke about. Right at the same time, we see Bitcoin actually find its bottom here and likely has just completed its A leg of the ABC correction that we've been talking about here on the channel. So what does this mean for XRP? How's XRP's price going to play out? Is it going to continue to perform like the Litecoin example that we showed last week on Tuesday? Or is it likely that when Bitcoin goes in for this final C leg that we see XRP price even go lower than that $2.15 and $2.17 area that we spoke about? So let's jump in and have a look at what we see here on the XRP price chart. So the first thing that we can see here is that XRP has come down for that $2.15 to $2.17 region and found support in this zone, and officially we're seeing a bit of a breakout of here today with XRP price rising to about that $2.22 mark, and that we have seen signs of a bottom structure playing out here on XRP. On top of that, we have Bitcoin, which we think has likely just completed its bottom of its A leg, and now it's most likely where we've just come up, and now that Bitcoin can go into a bit of a correction here before pushing back to those local highs. So if we have a look at Bitcoin's price today, it's most likely we do something quite similar where we then do push back to those local highs. I want to play a clip from XRP's price last week in what we spoke about on Tuesday's XRP episode and see how that has developed so far. If Bitcoin is to go into this correction here, and to make things clear, this is only the A leg of the correction, and that the C leg of the correction is much deeper here for Bitcoin, which I think is how things are going to play out. So where would that put XRP? You'd have to say that that $2.15 level is very likely to get hit, and it may even potentially go lower. However, I don't see XRP going sub $2, but I do think it could get pretty close in those low $2 areas. But we'll have to just wait and see how Bitcoin reacts in that moment. And if we do actually get this sweep like we want to see on Bitcoin here, where we get that ABC correction and then things can break out to the upside, in this moment right here, depending on where XRP's price is most likely where I'll think the bottom is in for XRP. But if I had to guess, it could be in those low $2 areas just by looking at the way XRP is holding up against Bitcoin right now. So what you can see from last week's XRP video is that we are actually expecting XRP's price to get down to these zones, and that it would potentially play out like Litecoin did back here in our 2017 example, where Litecoin came down, tapped that trend line, which is this trend line here, wicked below it, and then recovered the same way Litecoin did here. And then we should see price move to the upside, and that should be the last low that we see here on the XRP price chart, similar to the way this was the last low we've seen here on the Litecoin chart. However, if you've been catching the Bitcoin videos, you'll know that this is just the A leg completed here for Bitcoin, and that we're most likely going to run back up into these old all-time highs here around $109,000 to $110,000, which is the highest weekly close here on Bitcoin, and that we will flush in for that C leg, like our example here on the right side, where we actually see Bitcoin push back up for that B leg, where it comes back and finds equal highs here. However, never breaks the previous all-time high set at the start of the A leg down, and that we do see Bitcoin fall down for that C wave correction here before things can run up and get exciting. So how is XRP's price going to hold up in a moment like this, when we could see Bitcoin flush down for that C leg? Now that at the bottom of Bitcoin's A leg correction here, we've already seen XRP hit those price targets we were looking for at around $2.15 and $2.17. So there's a bullish and a bearish scenario here for XRP, and two ways that this can play out. And I think the most bullish case here is that in the short term, we see some news come out for XRP, which sends XRP's price chart up to around these $2.70 to $2.80 levels. Ideally, I think we sweep these highs and maybe land somewhere in these highs here, which would put us at around $2.70 for XRP. And I think that in this moment here is when Bitcoin actually runs up and completes its B leg like it did in this example here. And then as Bitcoin goes for its correction into its C leg, because XRP's price has done so well in this moment, it only falls down and finds support maybe somewhere in this zone here, before then finding its bottom right at the same area Bitcoin finds its bottom of its C leg, and then we meander around here for a bit before things can get exciting. So that is the most bullish case that I see here for XRP, and that we should potentially have some news coming which could allow XRP to outperform Bitcoin here in the short term. And essentially when Bitcoin goes in for that final flush and that C leg, that XRP's price has risen so far that that doesn't really impact the price of XRP, like we've seen in the past with how the XRP price chart played out. However, the more bearish scenario, which I'm somewhat leaning to, is that we may actually even revisit these local lows here at around the $2 mark, and it's likely that, similar to the way that Bitcoin's price is playing out, that this may just be XRP's A leg, and that we may see a bounce here, and then XRP should find its C leg, hopefully somewhere above or around this $2 region, which would obviously be a bit of a differentiation from what we've had a look at here on the Litecoin example. However, realistically, if something doesn't happen in the short term, which could send XRP's price higher to outperform against Bitcoin, and then if Bitcoin is to fall down for this C leg, which we're expecting here, then I don't see a way that XRP's price can hold these levels and not go lower if Bitcoin is to go lower in that same flush. And that the only way that could happen is that if XRP's price is to push into those $2.70 areas. So in the coming days and weeks, we'll be monitoring the Bitcoin and XRP price chart to see how things are going to play out here. However, if Bitcoin does come up for this B leg and we start to see equal highs like we've seen here on the right side, and Bitcoin gets to this region, similar to where price could get to today, if things keep playing out the same way that they are, then depending on where XRP is sitting at this time is when we can have a better assessment on the price. But if XRP's price hasn't bounced a lot higher by the time Bitcoin comes in for this B wave, then I think it's quite likely we see fresh lows on XRP down into this bottom range, anywhere from $2.03 all the way down to about $1.90 at the bottom of XRP's range here, when we can see buyers usually step in at these levels, and it's just a quick wick that takes it down here. So all in all, pretty happy that XRP is bouncing at these zones, and that the price analysis has been playing out quite well that we've been talking about here on the channel. Now it's just a matter of waiting and seeing how's XRP going to perform against Bitcoin as Bitcoin runs up into its B wave here, like discussed yesterday in the Bitcoin video. However, there still is the bullish scenario that things keep performing here like they have on the Litecoin chart, and that we do see XRP shoot up, and then as Bitcoin goes in for its C wave, XRP kind of consolidates and holds here like it has on our Litecoin example. So guys, I'll be back on Friday for the weekly recap, and we'll have a look at how Bitcoin price is playing out, and more importantly, how the XRP price chart's playing out. Because if we don't see that explosive bounce or some news come out here for XRP, it is likely we do set new lows below this region that we've initially marked out here, which no one really wants to see. But I think that being realistic here, if Bitcoin is to go in for its C wave, that XRP will likely set new lows here and do the same thing. So if you guys are new here, feel free to subscribe and give the video a like, it helps a lot. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them below in the comments section. Until then, I'll see you guys on Friday for the weekly recap. Have a good rest of your week.